We shouldn't lead with politics. We should lead with people. And Joel Cheatwood is our vice president of news for the Blaze. And he has been, overseeing the newsroom and looking at some of the footage that is coming in now, et cetera, and can probably bring us up to speed so we don't slow the line down in putting the news onto the Blaze. Joel, what are you seeing now?
Glenn, as is always the case with events like this, you never know what the devastation is like until the light of day and people have a chance to get out and look around. And what we're seeing is widespread devastation. I just watched the police chief of a little town in New Jersey, Seaside Heights, break down on the air because he's been up all night rescuing people, but he said, my town is devastated. And he related having rescued 25 people overnight, and he himself, operating in a 5-ton vehicle, they call it a deuce, almost being swept out to sea. And he said, I thought I was going to lose my own life. But he said, I go around my town, and it's just gone. And we're seeing that more and more. We're hearing reports of people trapped in their homes in waist-deep water with no power. We're not going to know the full extent of this for a very long time. But, we do know we have 6.5 million people without power in the tri-state area back here. And just a lot of devastation.
Did you see the video on the Blaze last night of the power substation or the transformers going out by the power station on 14th Street?
I did.
That's one of the most incredible things I've ever seen.
Unbelievable, and we're hearing over and over again people saying, never seen anything remotely like this. I mean, one of a kind, just amazing. And, I'm looking at pictures right now of just communities where the water is up past the doors on the cars, and they're saying we don't know how many people are trapped in their homes and just have no way to get out.
Okay, so Joel, what I'm interested in here is, one, this is the media's hometown.
Right.
And nothing, gas prices don't matter because the media doesn't buy gas. And so it only matters when it revolves around politics because they don't care because they don't live that lifestyle. It doesn't seem to matter unless it happens in Los Angeles or New York or Washington D.C. If the drought's going on, they don't really care. But this they will care about in a big way, and it will be personal to them. How does this play out? Do you think? I mean, what are we looking at are we looking at Katrina? Are we looking at less than Katrina? What are we looking at?
I think that you're going to. I think we're going to see this play closer to Katrina. I think you're going to see as the day progresses more and more stories of loss of life. Certainly devastation in terms of infrastructures of towns. Manhattan, they still don't know what the full damage assessment's going to be because they can't get into the subway tunnels yet. But they do know that there is standing water. You've got an entire metropolis that is completely shut down. I think that this will probably rank in the books in terms of dollars and maybe loss of life as one of the most extensive catastrophes to hit this country. And I think, again, it will unfold as the day goes on.
But, Joel, nobody was in the subway system, right, because they were all closed, and so nobody should have been down there.
That's
Hopefully.
right. I mean, nobody that we know of should have been down there, and they did a pretty good job at shutting down early enough and evacuating so that they minimize loss of life. But again, you've got people in houses with standing water.
Yeah, people live in those subways. The loss of life that may never be counted of the people who live in those subways who didn't get necessarily the warning until they started to hear that there were no trains and wondered why are there no trains. I'll bet you hundreds of people lost their lives that you may never even know because of the people that live in the subway systems.
I think that's probably true.
How is this, do you think, going to play out for the president?
Well, as you and I discussed earlier this morning, you've got a huge section of the country that is now going to have to figure out how they start up business again, how they start up just operating in the normal course, and we've got an election a week away. I'm going to be very curious to see how they resolve that. I mean, you've got polling places at the very least that have been wiped out. You've got people who will have no access to power or transportation for maybe up to 2 weeks or more. How we conduct an election given these circumstances is going to be really interesting to see.
They're saying now that they're trying to figure out if FEMA can go in and rebuild polling places. That's not going to give people confidence. If a giant, government-run FEMA truck is controlling the polling place, that's not going to give people confidence. Do you think?
Not at all, and I think that I think there's enough justifiable distrust of FEMA on a variety of levels that that's just going to send shivers down the spine of most people. I think the biggest concern here is that in the most important election in our country's history, arguably, you're going to have millions of people who either won't have access or, because of their own personal plight, will consider that a secondary priority. And what does that mean?
I had a conversation with you yesterday, if you don't mind sharing with me. We were both saying, look, I know God's will be done one way or another, and I don't presume to know God's will, and I don't think God doesn't bring the storms on to punish people or anything like that. But I can't figure out divine providence because I know that God's not neutral in the freedom of man. And I don't know how, divine providence will play a role in this election. That's the only thing that's going to save us. And I can't figure out how this one, this is really take your hands off the wheel, gang, and just live your life and do the right thing, because God only knows how this is going to turn out with this hurricane thing now.
This is one of those supreme examples of a time where for the life of me, common sense doesn't play into it, logic doesn't play into it. And I keep reminding myself that there's a much bigger picture that's held by God, and we do. We just have to, I think, relax in the fact that, His will is perfection, and because I can't figure it out.
I can't figure it out either. I have no idea how this is going to work. No idea. I couldn't predict this one. A million days you could give me, and I wouldn't be able to predict how this thing's going to end.
And yet, Glenn, this is such a definitive event, and the timing is so incredible that there's a plan. There has to be.
Has to be. Thank you very much, Joel. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
I would just like to challenge you to go find a vice president of a news division that talks like that. That's Joel Cheatwood, the vice president of our news division at theblaze.com.
Probably only at MSNBC. So spiritual over there.
Exactly, except the opposite.